So, Bob, as usual, people write in questions that they want you and I to answer. So I thought we would read those questions and answer them. What do you say, Bob?
I say, let's read the questions and then they'll do the answering.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Who are you, Bob?
I'm Bob Gtle, friend from graduate school and a therapist in practice in Seattle, and apparently the new owner of a fan club.
Famous patron Emily made a fan club pin or a magnet, and we might be stealing that idea for some merch coming up. So if you're interested in merch and you want a Bob fan club magnet, watch out for that. Stacy, my wife, is working on various different ways of even delivering the merch to everyone, but also different designs and this kind of thing.
It was completely flattering.
Yeah.
Does Emily know that you sent it to me?
Yeah. Well, she wanted you to have it. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Emily. It was totally flattering and really fun. And Colleen actually has custody of it, so I get to visit it.
And your quote is something like, "It's all about love," or something.
Love is the cure.
Love is the cure. That's right.
Yeah. Which is really Freud, not me.
So Kate from Ireland wrote in and has a very interesting email, Bob, that I want to know your opinion about. So this is about inappropriate behavior from my therapist, she writes. After a traumatic incident, I saw a counselor at my university. At first, she was really helpful, and I thought I was gaining a lot from it. But in the last year, I have been putting off therapy because of some of her behavior. For example, she has forgotten my name multiple times. She takes phone calls during appointments and sometimes argues with people on the phone. She suggested I drink alcohol before sex and wear provocative clothes to get over my anxiety around sex, even though I was sexually assaulted while drunk. She's never on time for our appointments. She has sometimes completely not even shown up for our appointments. She has forgotten why I am even there and asking me to retell my traumas to her so she can, quote unquote, figure out who I am again, unquote, over and over again, which is difficult for me to do. There are very limited counseling opportunities in my college, so I don't have any other option, I think. Or maybe I should just give up on counseling. Bob, what do you think?
That description is appalling.
Yeah.
It's almost, it's like one of those truth is stranger than fiction, hard to believe, though I totally believe it, but like just absurdly awful. I mean, my God.
Yeah.
My first hit was, is this counseling doing you any good? Because if it's not doing any good and it's hurting you, then you should stop.
Yeah.
And the level of unethical behavior and really just impolite behavior on the part of your therapist makes me think that they're not workable. Yeah. I might be wrong about that. I'm in favor of people talking to their counselor. I think that talking to your counselor about these things can be a great way to shape the person up, and also can be extraordinarily, extraordinarily useful and good for your own self-image, your own self-esteem.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Super appalling. And the first thing I thought of when I read this email was, I've trained a lot of therapists, and I have rarely come across individuals who are like this. There's just a certain percentage of people or therapists who will do this sort of thing. The other thing I thought was, I don't know if in Forrest Gump, stupid is as stupid does. I don't really know what that phrase means. I don't think I ever knew what it meant. Do you know what it means?
I have no fucking idea what that means.
Yeah. But for me, I've always interpreted it as you aren't a stupid person. You're only stupid for your behavior, and it's mainly your choices in life that define stupidity, so to speak. I think that was the lesson. It's like, is Forrest Gump stupid? Because he was called stupid a lot. Stupid is as stupid does. It's not like how smart you are on a test. It's what the choices you make. Do you make stupid choices? And the other way I interpret that phrase, and I don't know if it's accurate or not is that when people do stupid things, they tend to do many stupid things. And I see this in therapists, not only in the very rare individual that I end up having to gatekeep out of the program or out of the field, but also in ethical case studies. When you hear about these people who get sued successfully, it's rarely one behavior that got them in trouble. It's a suite of behaviors that they got caught for, and you, through the case study, you think, oh, they must have been doing this in all sorts of scenarios. So yeah, let's just review stupid as a stupid does from this therapist that Kate has. Forgotten her. So let's just walk through each line here. So forgotten the client's name. Now, I'll say from the start that I'm not that good with names, but I haven't forgotten a client name if I've seen them for a while. You know, because she says in the last year, so I suspect this has been at least a couple years. So I would never forget someone's name beyond that. But you know, I'm not that great with names. In the beginning of therapy, though, I'm terrible with names, and I don't know what it is about me in the beginning, but I've known that about myself, and the way that I adjust for it is I keep their file right next to me on a little table, and even if I'm pretty sure about their names, I glance at my file to kind of make sure that I get their first name right. And sometimes, I'm treating whole families. There's like 5 people in the room, and sometimes, I have to glance over at that. But so on one level, it's like normal, but on another level, when you take it with all the other behaviors, it all kind of makes sense. But Bob, have you ever forgotten a client's name?
Yeah, about 2 months ago.
What happened?
I'm seeing this couple, not for couple counseling, won't get into the details, and I called him Steve. His name is not Steve. It's not even close. It's not like his name is Scott. It's not even close. It was so far off the mark. And he says to me, "Who's Steve?" And I'm like, "Oh God, I forgot your name, didn't I?" Yeah, and he reminded me what his name was. But before he said it, before I said Steve, I kept trying to look down at my file like, what's this guy's name? What's this guy's name? And I couldn't see my file. Keep it in a box, and it's turned away from clients so that they can't see other people's names when they're in session with me. And I was turned away from me too. I couldn't quite see his name, so I didn't want to be distracted. Like, oh, hey, give me a thought there, And I'm like, I think it's Steve. So I took a shot in the dark. I was dead wrong. I was horrified. Yeah. I apologized, of course.
Well, so the other question is, did you have to say his name?
No.
Yeah. So it's not very frequent that we as therapists have to say people's names, unless it's in, conjoint therapy where there's more than one person.
Right.
So if there's Jane and John, I especially over the phone, I'm finding that because I do a lot of sessions now over the phone, and so I usually would look to that person, but now I have to call people out by name.
Right.
And but there isn't very many times. So I've been there before too, where I say the name and then I get it wrong, or I stumble on the name and it's clear I wasn't quite sure. And then I think, as a therapist, I don't have to say their name. I could have just said, "Hey, you," One of my, Paul David, my old mentor from the university, he would. He knew a lot of people. He was program director, and so there was a lot of people that he knew, and he would bump into that. Let's just say on the campus, a lot of people knew him, and he didn't know very many people. And he was in this habit, I noticed. I never asked him about this, but I always suspected. He would call everyone Guy, or everyone who looked like a guy, he called Guy. Yeah. Including me. Uh-huh. Like, even though him and I knew each other extremely well, we knew each other very well, and I would assume he would know my name because we would have one-on-one sort of interactions throughout the week. And anyway, so we'd bump into each other in the hallway, and he'd say, "Hey, Guy." And I always thought, I think he just learned, look, it's better to say Guy than to take a chance and miss someone's name. I also, Stacy has a relative, I think maybe her grandpa or someone. he called everyone Mike. He called it every guy Mike.
That's a riot.
Hey, Mike. Hey, how's it going, Mike? Probably for the same reason. But anyway, yeah. So it is a thing that therapists will do, especially when you have full caseloads. Especially if you're at an agency or a university clinic where you might have 50 to 100 clients. If that in isolation if that's the only thing, like with AKA Steve, I'm guessing you have a good enough. Well, what did you do to repair that minor rupture?
I said I was sorry, and then he called me. He's like, "Oh, no problem, Phil." And then the other day, I saw them last Tuesday, and the other day, I said, and we were talking about something or whatever, and I'm like, and remember that time I called you Steve, and we just had a laugh about it, and yeah. I have this thing though, ever since I just got out of graduate school, when I'm writing for an appointment, I use a paper calendar still. And when I'm writing down for the next week, who's, like I'm just seeing this client, let's say maybe his name's Carol. So I'm seeing Carol, and then next week we're scheduling our appointment, and I stare at the time block on my calendar and I can never remember the name. And it's because I got triggered when I was young and just starting out, where I was seeing a client and I was scheduling an appointment and I drew a blank on her name, and she's standing there next to me and she caught it and she smiled at me and she said, and then she said her name. I'm like, right. And ever since then, when I'm scheduling a client, my heart rate goes up a little bit.
Yeah. So I was having a hard time following you. I don't know if it's just me, but just in case people are having a hard time. So at the end of and I used to keep a paper calendar, actually the same at a glance, I think that you have. Mm-hmm. And at the end of a session, you pull out your calendar and you say, okay, how about next Wednesday at 5:00? And the client says, yep. And then basically right in front of them, you write, but they can't exactly see what you're writing, but they write they see you scribble something on your calendar. And there are times when you forget in the moment, wait, what is this client's name? And you skip a beat. And if you skip a beat too long, the client is looking at you going,
yes,
I bet you he just forgot my name.
Right.
Yeah.
This happens to me twice a week.
Really?
Yeah, for 20 years.
Yeah. Now, tell me which one it is. Are you bad with names, or because of the trauma of being called out, you get so in your head that you can't?
Yeah, it's the second one.
Yeah,
I'm okay with names, and yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's been a while since I have used a paper calendar, but the rare times when that would happen, I would just very quickly write, like I'd get like a microsecond of crap, I don't remember the name. Okay, great. And I'd close my calendar and move on. And then later I'd go back and put in the name.
Right. Oh, good cover.
Now the thing is, to people who might worry about, like, wait, does my client or does my therapist forget my name? The thing is that in other relationships, names are very important. Like when you work with someone, or they are, I don't know, one of the students in your class, it's extremely important because like with my students, for example, I have, say, 10 students in a class. Well, when they turn in their papers, I have to be able to identify who turned in that paper. When I call on someone in class, when I refer to someone, when Jane said this, blah, blah, blah. With clients, names almost never come up, especially in individual therapy. The other people's names, like the names of their spouses or their kids or their coworkers, but the name of the client, because you're never going to say, Jane, listen to me right now. Like you don't. It was a rare circumstance where Bob even said Steve. So it's not inconceivable to have a very deep relationship with your client and know a lot about them, but not have a very firm grasp on their name, so to speak.
Yeah, there might be a little slippery spot there.
Yeah.
It's not like you don't know who they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now,
you know what I do?
What?
When I'm writing the name, and it happens these days, I take a guess, and I start it either with a curvy letter or a straight line letter, and then I'm like, okay, is that the right shape of letter? If it's a couple, does one of them have that start with a straight line letter? Because that's what I started with. And sometimes I'm like, nope, that was Vince.
Okay, so solution, Bob.
Yeah.
Every client that walks in, write, my name is, and then write, Steve, and then put it on their forehead. And then you'll never forget. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing here is other behaviors is.
Oh my God.
She takes phone calls during appointments and sometimes argues with people. Now, I have seen this before. I did co-therapy with another family therapist. I've told this story in the podcast before. I'll never forget it. It was a big family, and so me and another therapist, the other family therapist, were helping this family out. And this was when cell phones were first kind of coming out. It was during the flip phone days, if that makes any historical reference to people. And her phone rings, which I found to be abhorrent because I would always silence my phone before going into session. And her phone rings, and I turned to her, and I thought, oh my God, she's going to be so embarrassed that her phone is even on, and she didn't look embarrassed, and then she proceeds to pull out her phone. I think, oh well, she's going to turn it off, and then she answers the phone. So there's 7 family members, me, the therapist, we're in the middle of something, and she answers the phone. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, she's just going to say, sorry, I got to go. And then proceeds to have, maybe a 30-second conversation like, oh, yeah, da-da-da, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't believe it. And how someone could be so oblivious. Now, there's not a lot of explicit talk about this, right? It's such a commonsensical idea that but anyway, so have you ever seen this sort of thing, Bob?
Yeah, the other night I was looking on the internet, and they had a thing on, funny Saturday Night Live sketches where the actors break up laughing. And they did this whole thing where Will Ferrell's a doctor, and his 2 patients are coming in, and he doesn't know who the hell they are. And then the phone rings, and he's talking to Beverly, and he's like, yeah, I've got these patients in front of me. Yeah, they're a real pain in the ass. And this kind of shit, right? And they're like, we can hear you. And he's like, oh, now they're complaining that they can hear me, right? And it's comical.
Yeah.
It's absurd. And this therapist is really doing that. And if I heard right, multiple times.
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to think what would be going on with someone that would be the case. That, are they impaired somehow? Are they drunk?
Yeah.
Are they losing their marbles in a certain way?
Yeah, right.
What is going on with that? Why would you take phone calls? Like, what would be the point of that? I mean, even taking a phone call while you're talking to somebody is rude.
It's rude.
Yeah, let alone in a therapy setting. And I want to be clear to any clients out there who are wondering about this. This is abhorrent behavior. Taking a phone call in the middle of a therapy session. Therapy sessions are sacred spaces, even for people who don't really go for that vibe as a therapist. Even if you're a real nuts and bolts cognitive behavioral therapist, you would never take a phone call in the middle of a session. So this is very, very strange behavior. And then arguing with people in the middle of session. She also goes on. She says, I was sexually assaulted while drunk, and I've been having anxiety around having sex. And she suggested I drink alcohol before sex and wear provocative clothing. So this one I would want more context around. It sounds very awful. And if the client is walking away with this message, then obviously the therapist failed. But I would want to know, because I've heard other kinds of accusations on therapists before along these lines where they enter into, say, a 3-session conversation about sexuality, and a lot of things are talked about, and the client walks away with this notion that is a highlighted difficult moment among 3 hours of talking. And so I'd want to know more. But again, given all that we've heard so far, it wouldn't be hard for me to believe that this therapist is so inept that they not only missing, you don't remember the client's name, you take phone calls. It wouldn't be hard to believe that this therapist would be so inept that they would recommend to someone who has been through sexual trauma that they get drunk before sex and wear provocative clothing to get over their anxiety. And then she also says she's never on time for our appointments, and she has completely not shown up for appointments. So again, this is abhorrent. Now, this one I hear, especially the not showing up on time, and let me just get angry about this, as I usually do. There are two types of people in the world. There are people who are on time, and there are people who are late. Me and my wife are on-time people, meaning we're early. And if we're on time, that means we're late. If we have a thing, we are out the door well in advance, and we're always 15 minutes early, if not earlier than that. And then there are late people who are always late, and we all know those people. Bob is an on-time person. Other people can be late people, and we know those people. They're always late, and if they're on time, you're like, what? You're surprised. You're like, how? What did you think? And often with my people who are always late, when they're on time, they got the time wrong, and they thought they were an hour late. I'm not even joking. And so what I say is that's fine. In the regular world, that's fine. There are on-time people and there are late people. And if you want to be, and the thing is late people, they always have excuses. Oh, well, traffic. Look, I'm an on-time person. I understand the concept of traffic.
You live here. You have to. Well,
it's not like traffic was invented that day that person was late. You know what I mean? Like, I'm late today because, there was wind drag on my car. It's like, there's always been these forces of nature that have, tried to throw a wrench into your being on time. And guess what? People who are on time are always on time. Now, in the regular world, fine. Make your excuses, be in denial, whatever. Annoy the fuck out of me and all the other on-time people, or at least be consistently always late in the same amount. So we invite you an hour early, and then you show up late, but just really on time. Anyway, fine. But if you're a therapist, F off. That S has got to end. You are no longer a regular citizen anymore. You are now in charge and responsible for people's mental wellness. And if you're one of those late people, that has got to stop. When you are even 1 minute late, 1 second late for a session, that hurts your clients. Clients can be late. That's up to them. But you cannot. And get your S together. Again, if you're a therapist, you have 30 standing appointments every week. You would think you would have ironed out any kind of wrinkles in your system about being on time. The other thing is that it's not like you're showing up for different appointments all over town. You just have to be in your stupid office. So it's not like, get to your office an hour early before your first appointment and just wait, just wait. Now, if you have some kind of medical issue that requires going to the bathroom, whatever, and makes you late for your appointments, talk to your clients, make sure those are obviously excusable incidences, but that's not usually the case. I would say to someone, if they were a supervisee of mine, I would say, well, it's better to end a session early because you have a medical emergency than to show up late for one. So you could say to a client, look, I have to end early. I got to get to the bathroom, blah, 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 and then show up on time for the next appointment. Anyway, this drives me bonkers.
You think?
Yeah. It's such a simple thing, and it's a litmus test, right? If you are so inept and so uncaring and so unaware and so chaotic and so impaired that you can't show up on time consistently to your appointments, there is likely a whole suite of harms that you are doing to all of your clients. I don't care how nice you are. I had a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, who had a therapist that was very much like this, who was never on time. And the therapist practiced out of her home. So she didn't even have to. So my colleague, friend, would show up to this therapist's home, and actually the clients could walk into the appointment room. And so she just walked in to the appointment room, sits down. She can hear her therapist walking around upstairs because she knows that, she knows that her therapist lives alone in this house. And 20 minutes pass, and she's just like, should I go up there and remind her? And this happened many, many times. And I just don't understand. It boggles the brain. At the very least, show up to your appointments, therapist. Now, I will say that drug addiction is a thing, and substance addiction is a thing. And when you have a problem, it tends to take its toll on a variety of areas, including this. And so it makes me wonder about that.
My first thought is that maybe this person's impaired by drug addiction.
Yeah. So there's that. Now, that doesn't excuse it at any.
No.
But it does kind of explain it. And the last one here is, she has forgotten why I'm even there, asking me to retell my traumas to her so she can figure out again who I am over and over again, which is difficult to do. So not only is this discounting, obviously, to the client, but it's also making a client retell their traumas over and over again without any knowledge. I mean, it's just
causing harm.
Yeah. Just awful. After more than 2 years, or at least more than a year, and it sounds like this therapist has this thing that she says, like, wait, tell me again your backstory, because I need to figure out who you are again. This sounds like she has that phrase at the go. I don't know. So, yeah, this is pretty awful.
Yeah.
Now, I will go back to the beginning of Kate's email and say, at first, she was really helpful, and I thought I was gaining a lot from it. So she did get something out of it in the beginning, which says something.
Yeah.
But as you said, Bob, if you're not getting anything out of it now, and it's not actually helping you, then maybe it's time to jump ship.
Especially if it's hurting you.
Yeah. Now, the other thing they say here is there's very limited counseling opportunities in my college, so I don't have any other option.
Right.
Yeah, and this is a problem around the world. Some communities have it worse off than others, but it is kind of a problem. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you hate Burger King, then you can go to McDonald's right across the street. If you don't like Seattle's Best, then you just go to Starbucks. And it's just easy. You just walk across the street. When it comes to therapy, we live in a world that just has a completely weird. It's almost like every therapist is their own speakeasy or something. Like you have to know someone who knows someone with the secret knock to get into. Maybe you'll be let in, but the therapist probably is all full anyway. And then it's back to the drawing board. And you're just like, how do we live in a world like that?
Right.
It's just a strange, thing. When I have a problem, if I broke my foot, I would be matched up with the perfect physician within seconds, minutes. I'd call my insurance. I'd be like, I just broke my foot. And they'd send me to a podiatrist, right? Is that the foot doctor? And that would be the thing. But you have a problem with sexual trauma, and it's like, well, here's some names. Maybe these therapists know. They claim that they're good enough with trauma, but that's a shot in the dark. And maybe they have space open for you, and maybe they're not impaired. We don't know. You have to shop around. Imagine having to shop around for a podiatrist the way that we tell people they have to shop around for a therapist, you know? Imagine having, I mean, obviously part of it just has to do with the fact that therapy is highly personal and a relationship fit and all that kind of stuff. But just even getting a chance to try that out anyway. Any last words to Kate from Ireland?
Given that in the present day we're doing a lot of telehealth, that might open some doors because, like, I was not open to telehealth till COVID hit. And now I'm like, I've discovered, surprisingly, that telehealth actually works okay. You know, and it's not a barrier the way I thought it would be. It wouldn't be my preference. And so when the virus stops, I'm plan to go back to my office and see people in my room, but I can't say that I'm going to hold that as rigidly as I have in the past. So I wonder if for this patron writing in, if maybe they could explore telehealth options that are outside their community. Probably got to cast a wider net.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And people out there, if you're a therapist that has room, make sure you do a good job advertising yourself because there are people out there needing you.
Hey, can I just air one of my pet peeves?
Yeah, please.
What the hell is the deal with therapists not returning calls to prospective clients?
Yeah.
Like, really good therapists don't return calls to prospective clients. They have that thing on their voicemail that says, my practice is full, which, okay, I get. You'd want to put that so that you can cut down on having to be responsive. But I've been a client and called around for therapists and not received any kind of response, and it stings.
Yeah.
And so now, like, for the third time in my life, I actually don't have any openings to take clients. It's all subject to change. It could change next week, next month. That's what's happened before. But when I get a call or an email, I respond usually that day, within 24 hours, and occasionally I fuck up. And when I fuck up and forget, I always say, you know what, I'm sorry. I took this long to return your call. Because I recognize. And now when people call me and they're looking for a therapist and I'm referring them around, I say, look, I know it sucks, but you can call more than once, and you might have to, because even the good ones who are very responsive once you're working together are shit at returning phone calls. I don't understand how people in our profession can be that blindly insensitive.
Yeah.
Like, people choose this field because they care, right? Well, how about caring about somebody that rings you up because they're in pain?
Yeah.
Nobody calls therapists when their life's going great.
Right.
They call when they're... Anyways. So, therapists out there, return your fucking phone calls.
Yeah.
Do people a favor. Just be decent.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is going to sound like I'm bragging, but I've been, I have a certain amount of notoriety on the internet, and so people reach out to me a lot to hire me, and I have an extremely small practice, and so I haven't accepted new clients in years, and so I've been turning people down for a long time, and lately I've been getting multiple requests every day, and guess what? I respond to every single one. Yeah. I tell it, and I don't got time for that, but I do it. Because it's just a common courtesy, They might wait for a month, going, well, is that person going to call me back? You might be the only person that they're calling. I don't know if you can hear my dog. He's getting upset about this too right now.
Yeah.
Can you hear it?
Kenobi calls back. Yeah. 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 You just sent me somebody, or you just referred two people to me in the last couple of days. To be perfectly candid, I do forget sometimes, and it's 2 days later or 3 days later. And whenever that happens, I feel awful about it.
Yeah.
Because they were in pain on Monday, and it's Thursday? What the hell, man?
Yeah. Yeah, and the only thing I can really think of as to why people do this is because it's like 99% of therapists do this. Yeah. And why would so many people do this? And the thing I can think of is, one, they assume that the person is calling a whole bunch of people, which might not be true. And even if it was, that doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense.
The other thing is that there's a lot of therapists who are very out of control of their lives, I find. they have a lot of chaos and disorganization, and their life is like a very cluttered desk, and so there's a lot of things on their desk that they need to get to, and in their mind they're thinking, oh, I'm going to call that person back, I'm going to do that, but there's all this other clutter that kind of overshadows it, and then a couple weeks go by, and they're like, oh, I should call that person back. Oh, it's been a couple weeks. I mean, what? I'm sure they've moved on. That it's weird to call someone like, 15 days later and saying, oh, sorry, my practice is full. That just feels weird.
Yeah.
And then they just don't do it, and it's just not acceptable. I'm an extremely organized person. I'm extremely on time. Again, it sounds like I'm bragging, and I guess I am on a certain level. But so it's I'm saying two things. One is that it's easy for me to do these kinds of things because I just I'm just extremely anal about having things be orderly. The example I always give is when I have groceries. You go to the store and you buy like a whole bunch of groceries, and they're in your car. And in my head, I do a calculation about the fewest amount of trips I can do from my car to my house. Like, okay, how can I engineer this so that I only have to do 3 trips instead of 4 trips, which is really kind of silly when you think about it. It's another 15 seconds and probably less likelihood of like spilling crap everywhere. And when you're carrying like 8 bags on one arm and it's just digging into your wrist.
Yeah.
But that's just how I live, for better or for worse. There's pros and cons. So it's kind of easy for me to do it. But the other thing is I just value the benefits of not being chaotic in my life. Now, I have certain privileges that allow me to be non-chaotic, I suppose. But at the same time, if you are conscientious, you think ahead, you're proactive, and you spend the time, you can actually eliminate a lot of the downsides of chaos. Another example I always give is when I get a bill in the mail, I pay it right then and there. Like, I don't put it in a pile to pay later. Now, again, that's a privilege that I can pay it in that moment. So if that's an issue, then obviously that's not an option. But if it's just a chore, like, oh, it's just the water bill that I just pay every month, I pay it right away. Because in my head, now I'm not saying everyone needs to do this, but for me, I'm just thinking, if that and the 100 other things I do in a day, if I put it off, that's another 5 seconds per issue that I have to address later on. Whereas if I just do it right now, and I don't want to do it right now, but if I do it right now, then it's off my table. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to look at a pile of crap that I have to deal with. I just deal with it in this very moment. And I know other people are out there are like me. Now, if you're a regular citizen and the cons of your chaos do not affect other people, then great. But if you're a therapist, the cons of your chaos will probably affect your clients. And that stuff has got to end, at least in the realm of you being a therapist.
I know really good therapists that are highly, highly responsive to clients that are already on their caseload. And, great. Like, call them up anytime. Like, that's the kind of availability they believe is ethical and proper. Which, great. Everybody's got their limits around that. Who don't return phone calls to prospective clients.
Why do you think they don't do that?
As you were talking, I was thinking, well, maybe they redline. They fill their cup to the brim with the various bits of life, work, home, whatever it is that people do with their time, and they run it right to the edge. So I take as many clients as I can, maybe even a little more than I can handle, and I get involved in activities with my family, maybe even slightly more than I can handle, and my schedule's overpacked, and who's going to get the short end is, someone I don't know is probably going to get the short end. Maybe I wonder if maybe people redline like that. I was also thinking that if things don't work out with our respective wives, maybe you could marry me because I'm like that too.
Colleen's not like that?
No, she is. She's very organized.
Oh.
Very organized. I was just saying that I pay my bills as soon as they come in. I don't let that shit go.
Yeah.
I'm like you. And I do that whole how many bags, how many trips to the kitchen from the car thing every time I go out to the grocery store. And
yeah,
anyways.
well, I mean, we're already kind of married in a certain sense, I suppose.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not bragging. What I'm saying is that a part of me just really enjoys it, but a part of me does this out of compassion for how my chaos affects other people.
Right.
And the less chaotic you are, which takes doing, it's not, I mean, Bob's known me long enough to know me during a time when the homes I lived in were not clean exactly. When I lived in Wallingford, for example.
Oh, yeah, great apartment.
It's not like that place was filthy, but it wasn't like it was clean. And I just worked on it. That was when I was in my 20s, and now I'm very clean. Yesterday, I did a full scrub down in the bathroom and in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Lots of bleach and whatnot. My wife came downstairs and was just like, "Oh, what's all this smell?" And I'm like, "That's the smell of clean."
Yeah.
And I wasn't like that before. But why am I like that now? Well, because I would practice out of my home, and when I looked in my bathroom, which my clients would go into, I was mortified, and so I changed.
Right.
I changed.
Yeah.
I was a chaotic, gross, dirty mess as a 19-year-old, and as time has gone on, I have changed, and I'm more organized, more clean, more conscientious, less chaotic. Why? Because people depend on me, and if you're a therapist, people depend on you, and so get your ass together.
You know, first off, I lived part-time in that apartment when you were there. And
every Saturday night.
Yeah, usually late night pizza. You used to cook the Red Baron cheese pizza with Tabasco sauce on it. Oh, that was so good.
Yeah.
That was so good.
It was like 3 cheese pizza.
Oh, so good. Yeah, that's the one. Anyways, not that bad. Kirk's apartment, not that bad. And I am not actually an organized person. Like, left to my own devices, my garage is shit. It's like chaotic mess. And the garage is a room that Colleen doesn't use, right? My nightstand is a table, the one table in my house that is mine, and Colleen doesn't use it. And it is stacked with garbage. Not garbage, but, just papers and stuff and bits that I don't feel like dealing with. I do not fold laundry when I'm single. It sits in a pile. It gets wrinkled. I like it folded. I prefer it folded, but I hate folding laundry. And left to my own devices, I don't fold it. I wouldn't wash dishes dishes I'm probably pretty... Anyways, I do that shit because Colleen's in the house. She likes folded laundry, so I fold laundry. And then I get the benefit of folded laundry, because I've done it. But it's accountability to others. That's what makes me clean the house and cook food and fold laundry and keep the house neat, except in those 2 free spaces that I have, the garage and
So are you talking about the nightstand by your bed?
Yeah.
There's papers on the nightstand?
Oh, dude. It's
why would there be papers? Like
I'd have to go over and check.
Like
it's
forms?
Not bills. There's a pad. There's no, it's receipts.
On the nightstand next to your bed.
Receipts. Because, we have a home business, and I keep the receipts for that, but I don't keep them in a very organized way. And they kind of pile up there. Eventually, Colleen got so sick of it, she just grabbed an envelope and she shoved them all in there. And she's like, "You can deal with them some other time, but at least I don't got to look at them, And it's mostly. And then there's like odds and ends. There's my book and a folder, and then there's my cup, and then there's my coaster and my cords to plug my phone in, and paper. I don't remember what it is. I don't even keep track of that shit. I don't know what's there. But it is my free space. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, the house is common space, and so I generally keep it up because it's not fair to Colleen to have to look at all that shit. She don't like it. And I actually prefer it cleaned up.
Yeah.
I just don't do it when left to my own devices.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is that accountability is what makes me change my behavior. You're accountable to your clients, wanting them to feel good when they come into your house and use your bathroom. Yeah, makes sense. You keep it clean. And without that, you might revert. But it's the same with the phone calls. Like, I feel a sense of accountability to people that ring me up.
Yeah.
I feel like they deserve folded laundry, if that's a way to put it.
Yeah, and I think that it is, we are accountable because of empathy and professional responsibility.
Right.
That if your practice is full, that you have some names of people who aren't full.
Right.
If it's hard to find those names, ask around, or at least put effort into that. When people call me and they ask for a therapist, I feel terrible if I was just like, nope, sorry, but I always have names. Now, I have the luxury of knowing a lot of novice therapists who are building their practices. They're supervisees of mine.
Right.
But if you don't have the luxury, then reach out to someone who does. And maybe it's once every 3 months you reach out to that colleague of yours who has a line on a lot of novice therapists, and you update your list. Not that hard to do. The reason why we need to do this is because clients have no other recourse. It's not easy. So it's not like walking across the street to the Starbucks as opposed to the Seattle's Best or vice versa. There are many people like Kate from Ireland who are dealing with a bad therapist, and they feel like they don't have any other options.
Yeah. And
they're dealing with a therapist who doesn't remember their name, answers phone calls, recommends they get drunk before sex to deal with anxiety, don't show up to appointments, forgotten why they're there. They're putting up with this crap because we as an industry, a global industry, collectively have not done our job to make it easier for people to be connected with the right people. And until that changes, it's on us individually as a collective, because the database or the referral service just isn't out there. So, and it's not that hard. If we all do our part, it's like litter. If we all do our part, then there's a lot less litter on the streets. If we all do our part, then there's a lot more clients getting connected with the right professional.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break, Bob. Let's shake this negativity.
Shake it.
And get back to another email. What do you say, Steve? All right, Bab. I was gonna call you Babs.
Nah, Steve. Steve's good.
All right, Steve. We're back from the break, and if people want to become a patron of the podcast, they can do that now. Mandrock writes in and says, "How much of being a good therapist comes from books, from formal education, and/or how much is it innate? Some people tend to understand other people more easily. How much does that matter? Does it make the difference between good and average as a therapist?" What do you think, Bob?
Great. It was an interesting question. Do you remember Sandra Lippincott?
Yeah.
Oh, I loved her. She was great. She was our ethics teacher, among other things, in graduate school. I remember her saying once, education will make a good therapist better, but will not make somebody who's not cut out for it any good. So I'm not a reader of books. There are a lot of good books out there, but I don't learn that way. So I don't understand how to learn how to do therapy from reading a book. That said, I recently bought a copy of Kirk's your supervision book, and I've been looking through it, and do believe that that's a good resource to guide me, because that's a direction I'm considering going. Anyways, so for me though, if I want to learn something, I usually find a teacher. I think that our graduate program was a quick and dirty way to get a license, and that while I really liked graduate school and I really enjoyed most of the classes we had and learned a lot, I think that the bulk of my education has taken place by seeking out training post-graduate school. And that's the way I learn, is I find somebody to teach me how to do it, and then help me with my learning curve. But the books, I can't do it. I can't make myself read them. And I also end up interpreting them in ways in which they are not intended, because they go through the distorted lens of my own insecurities and my own, whatever bias.
And you're like criticizing it as you're reading it?
More like misapplying it.
Oh.
I tend to be kind of literal. Sorry, let me try that again. I am literal. I miss literal jokes. People make literal jokes with me, and I have a pretty good sense of humor, but I take them seriously, and I'm like, was that a joke? And
really?
They're like, yeah, that was
I don't. Yeah. I've never seen you do that.
I do.
You understand humor.
I do. I understand humor really well, but I'm very literal, and I miss stuff because I'm literal. I miss nuance, and
I've never seen that in you at all.
Yeah, it's true, but it's particularly true with the written word.
Oh.
With the written word, there's definitely an over. I remember when I was reading the manual for how to do DBT, and my overlay was so far off the mark that I used to think, whatever I think I should do the opposite, because that's how far off the mark I was.
Wow.
Yeah. And the only way I actually learned that was I was taught by knowledgeable, sound.
So do you think you were innately a good therapist before you started?
No. I think I had aptitude.
Yeah.
And I think I wasn't any good at it.
Yeah.
I had aptitude, and I had a lot of experience being a client, so I still do that. I draw from my experience as a client as I am as a therapist these days. So there's a strong link there. But no, I think I have aptitude, but no. I needed the training. I really needed the training.
Well, it's interesting because I knew you back then, and I would say that you were a good therapist. It's just a matter, what do we mean by good therapist?
Well, that's a great point.
And I think both of us are similar in that I think we would both agree that we were not very good therapists when we first started, but we helped a lot of people when we first started. So how do we reconcile that? There are certain blind spots. Like for me, trauma was a huge blind spot for me. I don't know, a certain countertransference awareness might have been a blind spot. I don't know.
Totally me. That's me. Yeah.
Just self-confidence.
That's still me.
being real and authentic. I don't know. I felt like maybe I was okay with that in the beginning, but I would say that you absolutely had aptitude and an innate skill. You have always been you, and your you-ness is very much in line with what can be a good therapist, So
what's that word? You-ness?
the you-ness. The you-ness of you. Eunice is a name that we don't use anymore. I have a lot of aunts, like great aunts, named Eunice.
Eunice.
And we don't hear that name anymore.
No.
Like Eugene and Eunice. Actually, I think I have an Aunt Eugene and Aunt Eunice that are married. But anyway.
Those are not my favorite names.
Just watch, a bunch of hipsters will start naming their kids Eunice. So, normally I would answer the question similar to you, Bob, in that I always say 99% of what I know about therapy and about being a therapist happened after graduate school or outside of education, formal education. But at the same time, my formal education did provide me with a lot and gave me, and some of it was terrible. I'm just going to say that. Yeah. Not everyone was Sandra Lippincott.
No.
And some of it.
Is she still there?
No.
Yeah.
She left soon after we were there. So, I mean, maybe 5-10 years, but anyway.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to know the answer to that question. I will say that a lot of what I am as a therapist has come from outside of graduate school, but it's hard to know what graduate school exactly gave me. And it's also hard to know how much of it was innate, because I would say that for me, I was, when Bob and I met in our very first day of graduate school, and Bob at that point had an innate therapist persona, not persona fake, but like his humanness, his you-ness, if you will, was a good listener, caring, soft voice, compassionate, questioning of people beating themselves up. You've always had a good radar for like, it sounds like you're beating yourself up. I was not that way. I was not that way. People, for you, Bob, I'm guessing it was like, people come to me, even before I was a therapist, they would come to me and vent about their feelings and this kind of thing.
Sometimes.
I might have had that maybe, but not nearly to the kind of quintessential sense that you'll see some people will have. I was a frat guy, captain of the football team, douchebag, who was in a band and liked to subject other people to his music. And
do you know, the first night we met, that's one of the things that you said. You said, my name's Kirk, because we were introducing ourselves in Prosim with Flora.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And you're like, well, I'm Kirk. And, like every other guy in Seattle, I'm in a band. And my first thought was, I'm not in a band. Oh, shit. Am I weird?
Yeah, I mean, because it's just, by a certain age, you realize it's not a special thing. It's fun, and I love it, but it's not like something that is amazing. It's just interesting that was a part of my identity back then. That was a big part of my identity. But anyway, so I didn't have, and people will email me sometimes and they'll say like, I don't feel like I have the innate skills to be a therapist. Should I not be a therapist? And I will often reference myself. I'll be like, I didn't have the innate skills. I didn't know what empathy was. I literally just didn't really understand the concept. And when it was taught to me, it took me a while to kind of really wrap my head around it. Now I'm, in the top 1% of understanders of empathy.
Yes.
And the top 1%, I would think, of people who can do empathy. So having innate skills definitely gives you a head start, but you don't need those innate skills to become an excellent therapist. Contrary, I think, to what Sandra Lippincott was saying. Now, I will say that you have to have the drive. I think if I was to agree with Sandra Lippincott in terms of you can't make a bad therapist good through graduate school, I would agree that you can't make someone who doesn't want to dedicate themselves to humans. You can't make someone dedicate themselves to humans. You can't make someone dedicate themselves to self-awareness. Graduate school isn't going to do that. And so the best therapists are people who are truly dedicated, unconnected to any monetary benefit or any kind of accolade from society. They're truly dedicated to humans, to self-awareness, to expanding themselves, to the betterment of the human race and society. It just is, they just want to. It's not something they force themselves to do. They wake up in the morning. It's not a chore. It's something that they do because they want to. And I think if there is anything innate about a good therapist, it's that.
Yeah, I agree.
And of course, books and formal education can't teach you that. It can refine it. It can inspire, maybe, but like the therapist we talked about in the last section, I wonder how much that person really cares deep down about the human race and about self-awareness. I really wonder about that.
Yeah. Right.
So that's what I would say to that.
That's one of my favorite things about doing this podcast, coming on this podcast with you.
Yeah.
Is the very consistent reminder about empathy and softness that you are an example of. Oh God, I'm feeding the narcissism. Oh shit.
Well, what I was thinking was, and I didn't want to. Sometimes I just like to let you say things, Bob, without stomping all over it. So I was just kind of letting it breathe. But what popped in my head was, I think it's something about you're framing it like I'm inspiring you, but the way I would maybe frame it is our conversations inspire each other, you know?
Right. That
Like,
makes sense.
It's not like before I got on, the clean feed with you,
Right.
that you and I would, clean feed, by the way, is what we record this through. It's not like I was like, human race, yay, but talking with you inspires me. And so
Nice.
I think we inspire each other in that way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's nice. Hey, speaking of, it reminds me, when I was learning DBT and at that clinic learning DBT, one of the things they talked about as they were in training therapists is they would give feedback, but not about the therapist behavior in the session. They'd give feedback about the therapist-client dyad, which I don't know why that came to me. I guess because of what you just said about
Building
you
something.
and me. Yeah, we're an alchemy of some is perhaps greater than the parts to some degree,
Right.
or at least the result of them. Anyways, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Another thing I'm just realizing right now, Bob, is like, Zoom and video conferencing, we're all living that right now. And you and I were talking, we see each other over Zoom, we're recording ourselves on something else. But even though right now you and I don't have actual eye contact, I can tell you're looking at my eyes because, you learn over an hour, like, where my eyes must be.
Right.
Even though, and you must kind of know too.
I do.
Like, if I look over here, you know that I'm not looking at you.
I do know that. Yeah.
Even though right now I'm looking at your eyes, but I'm not actually looking at the camera.
No.
And it just occurred to me, and I wonder if research has come out about this, I'm guessing it will with all the video conferencing, that our brains adjust. Because as you look at my at where I think my eyes are, which is you're actually looking at my shoulder, my right shoulder. I, in my heart, in my emotional center, am interpreting that as eye contact.
Right.
And I remember a time when Zoom would drive me crazy because of this disjointed eye contact thing, where in my head, it's sort of like, I always use this example, when you first start snorkeling, your body doesn't want to breathe underwater. It's like, that doesn't make any sense.
Unnatural.
Or the first time you get on a bicycle and you're just going to launch yourself, your body's like, this won't make any sense. But eventually your body becomes used to it, and you don't even have to think about it anymore. And right now, my body has become used to the fact that when you look at my right shoulder, it feels like eye contact to me. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. I think you're right. That was my big bitch about Zoom before all this COVID stuff happened too, is, oh, sure, we could see each other on Zoom, but we won't make eye contact, and it's going to be disjointed, disconnected. And it turns out it's not.
Yeah. And I think it has to do with, like, your brain just adjusts.
Right.
Because it's like, after a time, you're just like, oh, this is what the visual cue of eye contact looks like. And it might even take 5 minutes to adjust because everyone is sort of looking at a different spot,
Right.
And if I move my Zoom screen over here and I look over here, does that feel like no longer eye contact?
Well, it would until my brain adjusts.
Yeah, because right now I'm looking.
How about now?
Yeah.
I'm looking right at the camera. How about now? Is this? It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. Because that was always the thing. It's like, okay, if we're going to have eye contact, we have to have a screen where the camera's right in the middle of the screen.
Like Star Trek. Remember the video conference in Star Trek?
Yeah. Which is, possible, but it would be this blank spot in the middle of your screen.
Right.
But maybe the other answer is just your brain's just adjust, and you just get used to it. Like wearing glasses. The first time you put on glasses, it feels weird, and then over time you get used to it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, maybe telehealth will be able to save the day in the end.
Maybe.
All right, Bob, what's the final word on today's episode?
Well, before we get to the final word, did we answer the question?
Oh, how much of being a good therapist comes from books, formal education, and how much of it is innate? I feel like we answered that question.
Okay.
Some people tend to understand other people more easily. Does that matter? Does that matter? I don't know. I've trained a lot of therapists, And let me think. Let me think about that one for a second. Because I have therapists that I've trained who do very much seem to understand humans better than others post-grad. And I don't know if it makes them better therapists. So it makes them a different kind of therapist, I would say. So that's what I'll say to that one.
I mean, how do we define the term, right? It's hard to say because the term is unclear.
Well, yeah, but I think I know it, or at least I'm interpreting it in a certain way. Mm-hmm. You know, I have a lot of trainees, and there are some trainees who, from the first second that I ask them to do something, like a role play or something, mm-hmm. they really just get other people.
Yeah.
And because it's an intuition, it's an intuition of, I bet you this person is feeling bad about X, even though they've probably never even told anyone about that.
Right.
Even if it's just something like they feel humiliated or something. The intuition of when someone's attachment injuries are happening. You have to understand other people. You have to have mm-hmm. a good intuition. And intuition mm-hmm. meaning not like energy space and crystals. I'm talking about the experience and wisdom you get from interacting with a lot of humans and a lot of self-reflection that makes it so that when someone gives a slight visual cue of an attachment injury, or the circumstances are likely to produce an attachment injury, mm-hmm. you intuit correctly mm-hmm. that the person is having it without them having to say it. And I think that is something that some people are a little better at than other people. Mm-hmm. But I will say that all my trainees, regardless of where they are on that spectrum, tend to be successful therapists and tend to help a lot of people.
Yeah.
I just think it makes them different kinds of therapists. That's the point.
Yeah.
And then last question from Mandrock: Does it make the difference between good and average? Again, I think we kind of answered that question too.
Yeah, I think we kind of answered it.
And I think the thing that I kind of eventually got to, which is that if the person cares and they're dedicated to self-awareness and they're dedicated to humans, then they have everything they need to become the best therapist on the planet.
Oh, that's really nicely put. Because probably you have everything you need to already inside you.
Yeah.
Right? It's a question of honing.
Yeah, and I will say that the book learning and the graduate school learning is really the only way to learn things like ethics or professional standards or research methods. There's no way that you're going to learn that on your own, or at least it's going to be really hard.
Yeah.
So there are certain topics, the professional side of our job, which there are many, and it's complicated, that you're not going to, one, innately have that, and two, reading a book is not going to give you that know-how.
I don't think there's a substitute for graduate school.
Yeah.
Like I could hire a supervisor, but they're gonna be my agenda driven as opposed to driven by a greater knowledge of the things that are useful to know. Boy, that's just a...
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah, right.
Now, I will say that as a supervisor, sometimes I set out and just say, okay, today I'm going to lecture you for a half an hour about X.
Yeah.
I actually write about that in my book, about the teaching role of a supervisor that I think is neglected sometimes. Because the notion that graduate school teaches every supervisee what they need to know is, of course, absurd. And that supervisors should become good teachers. Like, I'm going to teach you the concept of the working alliance. I'm going to teach you trauma therapy. I'm going to teach you what unconditional positive regard actually is, not what you pulled away from a chapter that you read in a book and was told by a terrible instructor about what that means. So let me tell you what unconditional positive regard and what Rogerian therapy actually is. It's actually really deep stuff. It's extremely complicated, very deep stuff. Yeah. Let me teach you that for the next half hour, and let's revisit that as we go on. I think that, and I find that supervisees want that kind of stuff. They really crave it.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of a lot of supervision trainings are terrible. I'm just going to put it out there. And one of the trainings I went to, it was a large group, and I'll try to keep this brief, but so if you're a supervisor, you're kind of at the peak or the pinnacle of the field, right? You're no longer in school. You have the experience. You are now given the mantle, and so a supervision training, to train supervisors, it has a lot of potential for people to be concerned about how they're coming across to other people. Let's just put it that way. And so I don't know if that was just me. I was contributing to it, but it felt like the vibe in the room of these 30 people, there was just a lot of self-consciousness, of like, okay, I'm supposed to be, these are a bunch of supervisors and I have to act like I'm a supervisor too, that kind of thing. And one of the major questions that the trainers put out to everyone in a discussion format, which I thought was a mistake, is how much supervision should be directive versus how much should it be led by the supervisee. How much do you set the agenda? How much do you route the conversation versus how much should the supervisee? Or when a supervisee has something that they need to learn, how much should you just tell them what they need to learn versus should they come to their own realization themselves? So just what's your general answer to that if you were a participant in this group and you were to raise your hand and say, well, I think, what would you say to that?
I would say I would want to be more directive if I believed that my supervisee's behavior was putting a client in harm's way.
Yeah. And Socratic if not? Socratic meaning, to people who don't know, you ask a bunch of questions
to lead somebody.
Leading, but also you're not really quite sure where it's leading, but you just, you might say something like, well, is that a dual relation? You as a supervisor, you might say to your supervisee, well, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think what you're engaging in is an unethical relationship? And you just ask a bunch of questions with the giving the supervisee space to figure it out for themselves.
No, I think I'd want to be more directive.
Right. Of course. I agree with you. And supervisees agree too. When I ask them, because over time, because I've become insecure about this earlier on, I would ask supervisees, I would be like, so often I'll just tell you what the right answer is because I know the right answer and frankly you don't. And so I'm going to tell you the answer. Plus, I'm your supervisor, and I'm in control of your practice. So you're going to do what I tell you to do. Yeah, I'm going to do what you're going to do. What I tell you to do, because if you do something wrong, I'm going to get sued too.
Yeah.
And if I don't tell you the right thing, that's on me. So there are many times I'm just going to tell you what you're going to do. And is that bad? Do you like that style? And universally, everyone's just like, no, I want that. How could I come up with the answer myself? I don't remember everything I was taught, or maybe I wasn't taught it. Yes, please I just want to know what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay. Now, obviously that's not in all situations, but there are situations where that's true. But in this training, it was a lot of, the main voice that was heard in the room was you would never tell a supervisee what to do. You would always lead them down the path of helping them to figure it out for themselves, which one is true for therapy, right? And so we don't want to confuse supervision with therapy. And I think a lot of these people, because they're therapists first or something.
Right.
And also it sounds paternalistic to just tell people what to do, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like you're a fascist, and that never goes over well, as particularly in therapy, particularly in Seattle, to just be like, no, supervisees are dumb and they need to be told what to do. They're not dumb, but I'm just saying they don't know anything yet because they haven't been given a chance to know anything yet. And so there's just a lot of things that they wish to be told, by the way. They're just like, please, don't beat around the bush. Just tell me.
Right.
And especially the people who are paying me money post-grad, they're just like, I'm paying you a lot of money. I don't want you to Socratically, just tell me the answer. And if we want to have a debate, then we'll have a debate. But just tell me what's on your brain, you know. Now, you know, you can say it tentatively and you could explore for sure. But anyway, why did I start asking you about that one?
Oh, boy, something about the question that the person wrote in for, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I might be a little bit lost.
Yeah. Usually you can pull me out of this, but we'll just say it's an unrelated topic that had nothing to do with it. All right, Bob. I guess that was the final word. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself and, you know, ride the line between fascism and Socrates, because
you deserve to.